Hello, everyone. So, my client's name is Joe Bell, and he's a 35-year-old white male. He is currently saying that he's in a domestic violence situation with his wife. The most recent incident that he had to deal with was about a week ago. He and his wife had gotten into a confrontation because he had left the bath water undrained after giving his child a bath. He said that she proceeded to throw books and binders at him, and it became physical. He said that throughout the relationship, he's had verbal abuse with her, but now it has escalated to the point where it's kind of in front of the kids. And then he said that this most recent incident where it was physical, he said that his kids did see it. The police were called, but he was not arrested. She was not arrested. Instead, the police had told him that he needed to leave the house and leave the situation. So as a result, he has been living in his car for about a week now. And he's just wondering what the next steps are. Either that means getting custody of his children to put them in a safer environment, or if that means working it out with his wife. So my 3 questions that I have decided to answer were what skills I learned from the class and how did I use them to prepare for my client. So I learned that it was important for me to not focus so much on the goal setting in the exploring phase. So I made sure to remind myself of that beforehand. And then I also wanted to be fully immersed in that experience with him. So I also learned that preparation was key. So I was mindful to go ahead and make printouts of all of the things that I would be using for notes, including the exercises that we were given in the class. So I thought that was important too. That gave me, time once we hit that contracting and assessing for me to really get that done without any kind of interruptions to our meeting, which also built a better relationship with my client. The next question is giving an example of a micro, meso, and macro level issue that I addressed with him. So he did have the micro issue with his wife, and I think that his relationship, as he said, was a toxic relationship, and he did describe his relationship as verbally and sometimes physically violent. I asked a lot of questions revolving around that relationship, just to kind of get a feel of where my client was and how he was feeling about that relationship status. I've personally worked with a lot of domestic violence victims, and so I thought it was very important during that issue that I made sure to let him tell me how he was feeling and not make those decisions for him and not push my opinion on what he should do in his relationship. Because, if I were to give him advice and tell him, well, you need to leave her, sometimes that doesn't necessarily mean that the client's going to take that advice. Sometimes it means the opposite for them because they're just not ready yet. And then a meso factor in his life was his job at Hitachi. The issue was that he was beginning to struggle, and he said he was having a lot more issues than he normally would, kind of messing up a little bit. So to kind of address that, I asked him, if he had let his supervisors kind of know what was going on, or if he had any friends at Hitachi, which he said that he didn't. And so I think the best intervention as far as that goes is not pushing the client to tell anyone his situation, but to just address the issues themselves that are causing him to have those problems. So I, would address like him getting into counseling, which he wanted, and also him, just leaving his overall domestic violence situation, which is something that he would have to choose in the long run. And then on the macro level, he said that he would like to get some type of custody of his children. Now, this is on the, this is determined by if he's going to leave his wife or not. And so as far as macro level, this does require courts and legality to make this happen. So if the client did choose, by our next session that this is something that he wanted to pursue, then a good resource for him would be Apple Red, which is free attorneys to help him with his case. And then the last question I had is there anything you wish you had done differently with your client? So I wish I would have maybe addressed the domestic violence a little bit more and explored where he was in that situation, beyond, like what I did on the surface, because I really, would like to know 100% where he's at. But I think it would be really important for this client to leave his relationship, to get the kind of case management that he really needs to be successful. But he would have to make that decision on his own. I also feel like during the exploring phase, I didn't really restate or say many things like as feedback during that stage. I really did hone in on those questions because I have struggled in the past with not asking enough questions. And so maybe that's something that I would have done a little bit differently. That way I could have gotten a better understanding of my client's mental state and like the ideal of what, his future held for him. But other than that, that's the case conference, and thank you for watching.